Hey everyone, welcome back to the Roots and Dirt podcast. Today we are recording without the help of all of the extra fancy equipment and stuff. We have some bad storms more moving through today, and I just wanted to make sure that I could hear the sirens if they go off. Now, with that being said, let's move on to today's topic. The 2025 growing season is upon us here in the north. It's such an exciting time of year, so much hope and promise for what's to come this season without all of the frustration of bugs and storms and flooding and drought or whatever may come. So far right now, the season is full of promise. And we are looking at growing a year's worth of produce for our family. So today we're going to run through what types of crops I am focusing on growing this year for our family with all the things going on in the world today. Although I will say that I generally think this way regardless, because I want what I grow to make the most impact on my grocery budget regardless. That is why we are able to live the lifestyle that we are. We'll also talk about what I do with all of the food that I grow and whether or not you need a lot of land to produce a substantial amount of food for your family. So for starters, what types of crops am I focusing on this year? Well, for one, I'm focusing on crops that provide a lot of food for our family without much need for me to do anything with it. So I'm focusing a lot on cold storage vegetables, things like carrots and beets and cabbage and like storage kohlrabies, potatoes, onions, garlic, winter squash, things like that. Things that really don't take a lot of effort for me to preserve. I can pretty much just put them in the refrigerator and be done with them. If they maybe have some mud on them, we talked about that in the carrot storage video. Maybe I rinse that off, but they really don't take a lot of effort. I can grow them quite easily and I can store them away, and they provide a ton of food for our family. I'm also focusing on convenience meals. So last year I canned up, or 2 years ago, I think it was 2 years ago, I canned up a ton of soups, ready-made soups, things you would have bought in the store. I canned myself and we put those up. They have been such a lifesaver, and I'm running quite low on them at this point. And so I am focusing on growing the things that I need so that I can a lot more of those soups. One thing I've also learned is that I would really like to have them in a pint size, because there's a lot of times I need a meal for maybe just one person, or this next coming fall here with all of our kids not in the home for most of the day, I am expecting to generally need food for myself. And so it would be very nice to be able to just open up one jar, and I can always open 2 jars and have the equivalent of a quart, right? But that way I have a little bit more versatility. It's also going to make it easier for me to be able to send some of those things off with my college students. They can take it, they can bring a jar to work and pop it in the microwave or however they want to heat it up on the stove for supper, and it's ready to go for them. So I'm talking convenience meal soups, things like chilies, things that are like tomato based, right? Soups that way, tomato soups, chili based soups, vegetable soups. I'm also talking things like potato and corn chowders. I love using up my excess zucchini in those types of soups, because zucchini gives it such a nice creamy base without needing a whole lot of extra things. I can't have dairy, so zucchini is a great creamy substitute in those situations. I'm also talking, we love Southwest chicken soups, chicken tortilla style soups, things like that. So I'll be canning up a lot of that. That means I need corn and I need dried beans, and obviously celery and carrots and things like that are staples in a lot of soups. We also love bean and ham soups, so we'll be doing things like that. So whatever, broccoli soup, our kids all love broccoli soup and asparagus soup. All of those things are things I can grow in our garden, or the bulk of those items I need for those soups I can grow in our garden. So I'm focusing on crops for that. So I go through those recipes, I see what all they need, and I generally take a guess on, okay, I'm going to try to grow this much of this so that I can make I can make X, Y, and Z. And then the other thing you want to consider with that is the age to maturity with some of those things. So if I am making a corn and potato soup, sure, you could freeze your corn until it was ready to make your potato soup, but I would much prefer to try to time the maturity dates of my vegetables if possible so that they're ready at the same time for when I want to make that. So I'm maturing my carrots and my different things at the same time as something else. So take those days to maturity into consideration when you're planning that way, so that you're not always having to store it ahead of time and then having to take it back out and reprocess it. I'm also looking at storing up things for our green drinks. We absolutely love green smoothies. So things that I'm going to freeze for something like that I often don't do. I don't freeze a ton of vegetables. There's some very specific things that I freeze, and I will go over that later on here, but we love green smoothies. And so I'm going to purposefully be focusing on getting spinach and kale and Swiss chard and beet greens, cucumbers, hopefully some gingers and things like that. All kinds of different things that we use in those green smoothies. I'm hoping to be able to freeze a lot of that so that I have it for the winter. I'm also focusing heavily on our berry crops this year and getting enough of those in the freezer that I hopefully do not need to buy them from the store. So that will be, we don't grow blueberries. Our soil's not acidic. However, I am looking at trying that again. I've tried in the past and they did okay, but the rabbits often ate them off because I just wasn't diligent about caring for them and keeping them wrapped up and away from the rabbits. So that's something that I'm going to have to consider and decide if I want to work through that. But we do grow our own strawberries. My mother-in-law has a large patch of raspberries. We're putting more raspberries in, and then we also have black raspberries, which I absolutely love. And so we're going to focus heavily on getting things like that in the freezer for our smoothies. I also really like freezing watermelon and making like watermelon slushes in the middle of the winter. It's such a refreshing taste of summer when it's 40 below outside and blizzarding. There's nothing better than having like a lemonade slush with a little lemon juice and some honey. Oh, it's just so delicious. If you haven't done that, I highly, highly recommend doing that. I'm also focusing on growing crops that eliminate the grocery store for me. Now, again, we're often growing enough produce for that to be the case anyway. However, there are certain staples that keep me out of the store. Say I decided to grow mostly cucumbers and peas and I don't know, cucumber, peas, and lettuce. Those things are not going to sustain us through the winter, right? Like they're going to be good during the growing season, and then there isn't a really great way to store those besides pickling, and I don't want pickled everything, right? And so I highly focus on crops like potatoes and onions and green beans, corn, dried beans, carrots, things I can actually make a meal out of. So we have a lot of our meats butchered by local producers, and so we're not having to run to the grocery store for meat all the time. So if I have beef in the freezer and I have pork in the freezer and I have chicken in the freezer, I have some sort of protein, right, already. Then if I have potatoes cold stored, onions, and some green beans or cabbage, I could make coleslaw. I could warm up green beans. I could roast potatoes and onions together, season everything, and depending on how I use them, I could make a plethora of different things. We could do warm potato salad. We could do just oven roasted potatoes. We've got mashed potatoes. We have every potato type of thing you could ever think of, right? Like twice baked potatoes. You make it as complicated as you want to make it. You could make a potato soup with whatever protein you want. You could, potatoes are such a great staple. Having all of those types of things are such great staples. I'm focusing on putting tomato products up because I can make spaghettis, I can make lasagnas, I can make chilies, I can make anything that's tomato based, which is a lot of things that we consume, right? If I can make salsa, that means that all I need to have is tortilla chips and we have a super easy snack. And we live in what our kids call an ingredient household, right? Which means there aren't often store-bought snacks in our house. So salsa and chips come in clutch when someone needs a really quick snack, something to munch on, right? And I don't feel bad about them eating it because I'm buying a good quality tortilla chip, and that salsa is loaded, chock full of vegetables that came from our garden. I'm focusing on things like that. Salsa keeps me out of the store buying other snacks, right? Things like that are items that I'm focusing heavily on. So think about what meals you make and plant more of those things. Obviously, I'm planting lots of other things. We have a large space, so I can grow plenty of different items, but if I had to pick and choose, I would pick my staples. I'm also focusing on planting things that preserve themselves. This year, we're down to 4 in our household. We've previously been 6, and then this last couple years 5. Now we're down to 4. And I think I could actually grow enough grain corn and for our own cornmeal. I'm from the South originally, so I love my grits and my cornbread and things like that. So I think we could probably grow enough of our own grain corn. I also think I could probably produce almost all of our own dried beans. Normally we'd buy them in bulk, and I probably still will for a bit. But I'm gonna see just how much of a dent I can make in my dried beans this year. And they don't take any effort from me. I plant them, I leave them, I harvest them at the end of the season, and then I shell them when I'm watching a movie whenever I have time, right? So they're so easy. The grain corn takes no effort. You let it dry, you harvest it, you leave it till you need it, right? So what will I do with all the food that I grow? Well, I've touched on this a little bit when I said that I would cold store all the vegetables that I would cold store. Our winter squash I stores the best in the house in a normal room temperature home. You're actually going to get a better longevity out of that than you would if you tried to cold store it. I know they say that it likes to be a little bit cooler, but it's really not true. Keep your squash at room temperature. It will store better for you. Winter squash, obviously. Onions and potatoes, we are storing those in our heated garage that we don't really heat, but it's an attached garage. We don't heat it until I need it for growing plants in the spring. And so that keeps our potatoes like between 30 and 40-ish, 30, 45 degrees, somewhere in there. So we do that with our potatoes and our onions and our garlic. And then we store our carrots and our beets and kohlrabi and cabbage and all those really good other root crops in our dedicated refrigerator, which also ends up with, bulk cheese and things like that in it. Other ways that I store vegetables, I do some canning. I do a lot of canning, but I don't can as much because we cold store a lot. So I'm canning all of our tomato products pretty much at this point. I am canning corn, green beans, juices. We do a lot of our own apple juice. I've also canned cantaloupe juice one time. That was interesting. I don't know if I would do it again, but that was kind of a unique, kind of different thing to try and a way to use up a lot of cantaloupe. We're canning pickled beets and garlic dill pickles, things like that. We pretty much do all of our own jams and jellies, or I buy those from local markets. We can all of our own hot sauces and lots of chutneys. I love like a curried chutney and things like that for eating with lamb and just lots of different Indian food. Or we smear those chutneys or different like specialty jams and stuff on some homemade pizza crust with some prosciutto and some goat cheese or bacon would be really super delicious with that. It's so good. So we do a lot of those type of specialty things now that are really, really expensive to buy in the store, but it doesn't take much to make a small batch of them here and supplement us through the year. I freeze very little vegetables at this point. I do freeze leeks, I freeze celery, I freeze sweet peppers sliced for fajitas and things like that. We freeze shelling peas, and I freeze all of our fruits for smoothies. So our strawberries and our raspberries, our black raspberries, gooseberries, things like that. I'm freezing for smoothies and such, but I don't freeze a lot of vegetables. I know a lot of people do, and that's fantastic if that's the way that you prefer them, and if that's the way that is easiest for you to store them. If it gets food in your home, that's fantastic. I have had problems with freezers conking out and I lose a ton of vegetables, and it's not the same as when a freezer conks out and you have just meat in there. That meat stays frozen so much longer. But vegetables and fruit, they get icky really fast. Like within hours, they're starting to thaw. And I don't want to go through all that work and lose those vegetables. So if I can store them in a different way, I will. But some things I really do prefer frozen. I do also dehydrate celery and leeks, but it's just my freezer's already running and it takes more energy to dehydrate something. So I just prefer to not do that if possible. And then again, I'm also storing things that don't need any help from me, like the grain corn and the beans that I can just shell, put them in jars, and I'm done. Now, if I lived somewhere where it was not as cold during the winter months or we had a longer growing season, I would not preserve as much food. We really only have about 3 to 4 months of good solid growing season here. And so the entire rest of the year, I'm having to provide out of what we have put up for the year, right? But if I live somewhere where I could grow 6, 9, even maybe 12 would be awesome. If you could grow 12 months out of the year, I don't know why you would preserve much. So if I lived somewhere where I could grow food for longer, I would focus on growing things that we consume regularly, right? Like grow for the season, eat as much as you can and put up the extra. But I would not be focusing at that point on growing an entire year's worth of food at one time. Think about the amount of time you actually need to store food for and just grow for that. That's not my growing situation, so I can't speak to that as much. There's other YouTubers that would have an easier time doing that. Every situation is so different and so unique. Here in the north, though, we have a very short season, and some things are going to be the same everywhere, right? Like in Texas, you can't grow everything all year. You're not going to be growing lettuce and peas and things like that in the summer heat. That's where I'm originally from. I know you can't grow lettuce and peas in July. That makes absolutely no sense. I can barely grow lettuce and peas in Minnesota in July. So think through stuff like that and go, do I have to grow a year's worth of food at one time? Because if you don't, you even need less space than what I need to grow your food in. This is the end of part 1 on us growing a year's worth of produce for our family. Thanks for joining me today in this little bit different format for the Roots and Dirt podcast. I hope you'll join me again tomorrow.